to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Policy. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of this meeting has notified the superintendent's office. The desire to speak has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting will also be read and made part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our meeting on September 16th.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of September 16th, 2025.
I second.
A double second. All right, any corrections or comments on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. All right, next up, we'll hear from our representatives.
All right, so today, October 7th at 5 p.m., there is, and well, it's still going on, the Escape the Vape seminar. This is in the Chelmsford High School Learning Commons, and it focuses on the dangers that comes from vapes while also giving families preventative skills to use against it. Also, the CHS class of 2027 student representatives is hosting a Halloween movie night on October 18th at 6 p.m. in the Performing Arts Center. This will have snacks, raffles, and will show the Hotel Transylvania movie. And there's also no school on October 13th, which I'm pretty excited for due to Columbus and Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah, to continue off, nothing too much going on. On September 29th, the craft fair, it was a huge success. Freshmen and sophomores were able to see all the available clubs during Plus Block in the gym to see what's available and see what they have interest in. As well as on last Saturday, the Pumpkin Palooza took place. A lot of clubs had their own tables with games and games available for everyone to participate. Clubs are spreading awareness for what they do, events they hold, and what their purpose is. A lot of elementary school kids showed up and dressed up in costumes and participated with the club. It was an amazing event. All the clubs came together to share their information involving fun games and prizes. And to end it, Picture Day retake is on October 22nd.
Great. I have to admit, thought you said the workshop was on Escape from Apes. I thought that'd be a good one too, but
That'd be pretty cool.
I think Escape from Vapes makes a little more sense, but
But if apes came, it's good to know what to do.
it'd be nice to know how to
It's a
go,
good
right?
skill.
October 22nd.
All right. Any other good news to share?
Yeah, just to plan ahead, I know we're still in October, but whenever we're in 1 month, I'm always in the next month. So November is the Theater Guild's presentation at Oklahoma, and their tickets will be on sale, so make sure that you get your seats. It should be good. And before we had our meeting tonight, we are happy to announce that our assistant principal, Christopher Cohen, is now on board at McCarthy Middle School, so we're very excited to have him with us.
Great. All right, anybody else, any good news they want to
I
share?
know the high school, you guys had the leadership conference again this year. And it was Mr. Bartos and Tom Peterson, I think, got together and kind of led it. And that was very great to hear because we need to see great leaders continue onward. This is great.
Could I just
Yeah,
put
absolutely.
two quick ones on these? Say that we actually, this afternoon, had the first of three kind of internal visioning sessions for the Parker Middle School building project. We had about 45 people come, predominantly district staff, staff from Parker. We had some admin and teachers from the fourth grade level, because obviously one of the options we're looking at is a 4-5-6 configuration. So we wanted to get elementary input as well. But it was actually very well attended. The next three, this is the first of 3 Tuesdays, we're going to be doing that work. But a great group, they seem to be very involved. AI3, the design firm, and Mike Perillo, who is their educational consultant who's helping us put our education program together, led the discussion in the different sessions, but it went off very well. So that's the internal work. And then there's an announcement going out either tomorrow or Thursday morning for the 3 public sessions. And so our first public session where anyone in the community can come, this is external. Obviously, anyone inside the schools can come, but the promotion, we'll be pushing it out publicly, is 2 weeks away. So it's going to be on Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's going to be at the Chelmsford Elks on Littleton Road.
Okay.
So that's where we had some of our visioning sessions previously. And that evening is going to be kind of a critical night, and we're going to be working to tape these so that we can actually then show them and broadcast them to the public if they can't attend. But that'll be a complete recap of exactly over the last 5 years, kind of how we got to where we are, the decisions that we have to make between now and the end of the calendar year. It's going to actually come that quickly around the different options we have to explore, which ones we may want to spend a little bit more time with, which ones we might want to take off the table. And we'll lay out the whole agenda and timeline for the project. So that's a key one, kind of a save the date. Anyone who would like information to lend input, insight, Wednesday, October 22nd, at the Chelmsford Elks at 7 p.m. And again, literature will be going out within the next day or two about that. That'll be a good night for people to be able to participate if they're interested. So just those two good news items about the Parker project. It's really getting off to a good start.
And just to add, the group in general was very, very enthusiastic. A lot of good opinions. Great, the students in particular were very free with their opinions of what they would like to see in a new school. So, it was
That's
quite a
wonderful.
good take, yeah.
So when people ask us at meetings, because I get this question a lot, when would the school actually be built, like finalized and students can walk into it and have classes there? What would you estimate is possibly the earliest?
The schedule right now, which I think is realistic, and, aggressive, but would have the building, if everything goes according to plan, open for the 2030-31 school year.
Wow.
So in September of 2030 is when it would open, whether it's the 2, 3, or 4 grade level school, that's likely when it would open. So we're about 4.5 years away.
Not even a half, 4.
4,
That's wonderful.
Which is closer than we were before, so.
closer than we were before. But yes, it's and we'll have that whole timeline down for you.
Yeah.
Any other good news? Okay, we don't have any speakers for public comment, so we'll move right into new business.
Thanks. We actually have several kind of updates tonight. Linda's going to share the MCAS updates from last spring. We're going to talk a little bit about our strategic plan, get into some of our goal work, but a lot of this is going to be grounded in the work that's already underway. So I'll actually turn it over to Linda to share the MCAS update with us.
Great. So, so don't be afraid of my 39-slide PowerPoint. It has a lot of just background information for you, and there is no quiz at the end, unless you would like me to develop one while I'm speaking. So this is just the annual update of our spring MCAS results for the district. So this is just focusing on how our students did at the larger district level, as well as at the school level, and then looking specifically at some of our subgroups that we've been working on as a district through our strategic plan. So just these are the kind of the updated kind of slides on our percentiles and our accountability system. So our accountability system provides an overall classification for each school and district based on 2 measures. So it's a normative percentile, and that compares schools statewide, and is a criterion reference progress that shows how schools are close to meeting the improvement targets that are set by DESE. So that criterion reference, each year we receive targets from DESE as to where we should be for both proficiency levels and also some of our student growth percentiles. The hard part about our targets is we don't typically receive them until January of the current school year, so it gets a little, difficult for us to make sure that we're on target with them at times, but we do wait for them to come out by the Department of Ed, and then we go through them and make sure that we're working towards that. So what they're doing for criterion reference, and I'll go over it a little bit more when we get to that, is they're really looking year over year, so it's a different cohort of students, but they're comparing you for how you did the previous year compared to the current year that you took the MCAS. So it's 2 years' worth of data, and it's against ourselves, not the other districts that are out there. The percentile is how we're performing compared to like districts. So starting with the school percentiles, so it ranges from 1 to 99. One of the biggest things that I tell people is if you remember ever bringing your kids to the doctors and they tell you what percentile your child was for height and weight, think of percentile that way. So it's between 1 and 99. So if you're closer to 99, that's higher. And it shows how each school compares to others serving similar grade levels. And these percentiles are divided into 3 groups. We have K-8 schools, combined K-12 schools, and then high schools separately. So they look at your configuration as a district and what you offer for schools. So like our high school is a 9 through 12 school, opposed to some of them in the area that are 8 through 12. And that's the schools that they're comparing you to. And then looking at our percentiles for all of our schools, none of our schools are requiring assistance or intervention from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is very good, but we never are in that danger of being, receiving assistance at that point. If you look, we have the different percentiles that are up there at Chelmsford High School at 80%. So when you think of that, we're outperforming 80% of the schools that have the same profile as Chelmsford High School. That's the best way to think about that. So we have some increases, we have some that have gone down just a little bit, but then for the most part, they've all gone up. So that is very good for our percentile. So that's how we compare to other districts. If we're going into the criterion reference, this measure just assesses how we're doing towards those key indicators that come from DESE for our achievement in ELA, math, science, student growth, English learner progress, chronic absenteeism, and high school has a few others, which include advanced coursework and completion of those courses. So that's your dual enrollment classes and your AP classes. So they have that additional piece on there. And then schools are actually rated on a it's a 4-point scale. So if you're looking at this measurement right here, they give us certain percentages towards how we're doing towards achievement, then how we're doing towards our student growth, and then English proficiency for all students and lowest performing students if we have enough students in that criteria, and then that additional indicator. So this is our grade 3 through 8. And when you get to the high school level, they have the same indicators, however, they have advanced coursework completion. So that's your lesson on criterion reference for 3 through 8 and 9 through 10. And then from there, each of those indicators receive points based on how much progress they made towards those state targets. So if you declined, you received no points towards it because you made 0 progress towards it. If there's no change, you have 25% improved, but still below the target that they gave us. It's 50%. Met target, you receive 75% credit, and then exceeding it, you receive 100%, which is the 4 points. So it's on a 4-point system. I will tell you that when they give us our targets, they're not huge, so they're looking for you to go up like a few points. And what's kind of hard, especially on the proficiency level for us, is that it's an exact number. So if they say you're supposed to be at 503, right, and you make 502, you've declined. Do you get upset if you went down by 1 point? I would say no, because 500 is meeting standards, right? But that's how this is how they assign our accountability. So it does get a little tricky. This is where we've had the conversations even with our strategic plan, where we have the exact number that we're going to make 85%. Well, there's times we make 83%. Is that the end of the world? No, but it would be considered not making progress. So overall for the district, we're considered 46% towards working towards those target dates, those targets that they set for us. We have moderate progress overall, and obviously our overall classification is not requiring assistance for the Chelmsford Public Schools. So it's not that we're making 46% progress as a district, we're making 46% progress towards meeting the targets. Make sense? I don't want people to think that we're only at 46% out of 100. So this all goes on our accountability page, and this is a snapshot from the accountability page from DESE. What I did is I highlighted the areas, so those red boxes is where we lost points as a total, right? So these would be the areas that we'd want to, look at to make sure that we don't have year over year issues in here. I think some of the ones that really stand out for me is, so you have the difference between all students that are not in high school, so those 3 through 8, and then high school has their own piece. I think some of the areas is that our proficiency for ELL students went down than we've had in the past from last year. We did lose some points in achievement at the high school level. We lost like most of the points from the high school, and we're trying to dig into what are some of the factors that affected that. So it doesn't mean that the students didn't meet their standards. It's just that they didn't exceed those standards. They would decline, they would below what DESE had set for us. And then looking at chronic absenteeism at the high school level. Those would be the bigger areas that we would have to take a look at. The chronic absenteeism one is something that they can take care of like immediately with their attendance policies within their programming and working with those families. That's something we don't have to wait for DESE to give us targets for. That is something that the high school could work on immediately. So those are the areas that we're working at a district level and at the school level to have conversation about like what happened at the high school specifically and what happened at some, like losing those proficiency levels for ELL students. We have to look at those students specifically. And then just as a refresher, students receive any type of a score between 440 to 560. So not meeting all the way up to exceeding expectations. And I put this in from last year as well because the class of 2026 is the first class. So when they were in sophomore year, they had to meet those new proficiency standards, so they were higher. It's higher than what other classes had to meet. And this current class that are juniors now, so the students that took the spring MCAS in March and April, they were required to meet those higher proficiency levels. So DESE has changed it, so they raised the bar. These are the two classes that you're seeing that hit that. So these kids that are now juniors are the ones that had to meet those new expectations. Okay, so now let's look at actual data that we have as a district. So what's nice is we have like a platform, it's called Open Architect, so we can look at everything, collectively. So just as a district as a whole in ELA, we've had a little bit of an uptick. So on the left-hand side where it says over time for ELA, you'll notice that we at least had a little bit more progress since 2021. However, our data is typically pretty flat lately, even with some of the things that we've implemented. Good flat, because we tend to be in the higher rating. So when you see those blue, the dark blue and the light blue and the light blue are exceeding and meeting the standards. People have to remember too that partially meeting the standards is passing. So that upper part of the gray, those students would be passing MCAS. They're just right on the bubble of getting that pure 500 for proficiency, so that this is an exact number. So we always do better than the state in ELA, but you'll notice that where our data is a little bit flat with a little bit of an uptick, obviously, in ELA from last year to this year. Moving on to math, this is where we start to see the dip. So data's close to being flat, but we did see a decline in mathematics across the district. So this is 3 through all the way to the grade 10 students for MCAS in mathematics for the school year. And then for science, where, again, that flat data, but we're still holding strong at some of those higher rates. And those students that are impartially meeting are still passing their MCAS across the board in science. Okay, so now we're just going to move on to some of the school level results because that's what makes up those total results that I just went over. So looking at the individual schools, we tend to still, again, we're higher than the state, but year over year, we're noticing that students, we still have to close that gap for students with disabilities. You'll see the green at the bottom, the green dot, that would be students with disabilities, and then students without disabilities. So our students without disabilities are still outperforming our students with disabilities. So that's why that is part of our strategic plan and why we're looking into the servicing and how those students are learning in the classroom. And then what it does too is gives you the year over year for how the schools are doing year over year. So our data tends to, stay steady, but again, flat. And this is across the board for the state and some of our area school districts. We have not received our DART districts yet, so those are the districts that have a very similar makeup to Chelmsford for 2025. But in the Merrimack Valley in general, they're seeing the same type of results. And then mathematics, this is where you see that dip and that little bit of a wider gap. So the mathematics is where we're seeing that wider gap for our students with disabilities. And for our science students as well. So this just gives you an overview of how the individual schools are performing. And that's when they have those specific data meetings at the school level, grade level, teacher level. Moving on to student growth percentiles. So proficiency is how you did based on, you have to 560 is as high as you can go. This is how did you grow from where you were, right? So we're focusing in on those, ranges indicating student progress that are comparable to peers within the district, right? I mean, statewide. So how did students do compared to how other students did statewide? So as a district overall, we have typically the 1 year growth. Where you'll see some of the gaps is even our students with disabilities, and I've talked about this when I go over the iReady data as well. 1 year growth is great, but if you are not at grade level or not close to grade level, you have to be higher than 1 year's growth, right? And you need that stretch growth to get there. So as a district, we make 1 year growth. That's wonderful. But if you are behind, you need to make even higher growth than 1 year growth because then you'll never get that catch up. That gap will never close. So that is the work, again, that we're doing with the strategic plan to find out how we can close that gap for those students. And again, for mathematics, you're going to see, it's a similar story as we go through each one of these for ELA and math. Science does not have student growth percentile. You need 2 consecutive years of data in order to do student growth. And science only administers their test for grade 5, 8, and grade 10. Grade 9 students take it for, take biology if they're in the honors biology class. So you'll see 9th grade data. Do you have a question?
Yes, so when we're looking at this data for McCarthy and for Parker, starting last year, right, is when we split the,
We're in year 3, right?
this is our third year. So it's 23, 24, and 25 data. It's already the 5, 6, and 7, 8.
23, 24 was the first. 24, 25, last year was year 2. We're in 25, 26 now.
Okay,
The data's from year 2.
but I think the data is only 2, right?
You're only going to
Correct.
have,
Okay.
you're going to only have the 24,
Yeah,
no, you'll have the 23, 24, and 25. No, yes, I'm sorry, 24, 25.
24 and 25, okay.
Right, the data that you have beforehand is when they were a grade 5 through 8 school. That would be the same thing for Parker. So I did pull the information for our special ed subgroup because, again, that is one of our focus areas for the strategic plan. And when we look at just their overall data in general, although some of it may be low, they are making some gains in some areas, and you'll see that they're at least some closer to that, like 480 area for their performance, and then how they're doing across the board by the schools. And again, that's a good point that you make, Maria, that for when you're looking at Parker and McCarthy Middle School, you really only have 2 years' worth of data to look at. And again, for mathematics, and for our science students. I'm letting you take it all in. And then our SGP for the same subgroup for ELA and math. Overall, we see that there's definitely a higher growth piece, so that's great. We want to see that growth, but we need that additional stretch growth in order to see those gaps close. So interestingly enough, in ELA at center school, that gap is not wide at all. If you look at the average SGP by school at the bottom in the middle, they're right next to each other, so their gap is very minimal. And then when you get to mathematics, you'll notice that for the math, South Row has the small gap for math between regular and special ed students compared to the other schools.
Has there been any I know it's very early days, you got this data like last week, but has there been any consideration of whether there could be some debriefing of, what practices might be distinct about South Row for math and Center for ELA that might be worth considering piloting at other schools?
Right, that is one of the things. So I do know the math specialists have been looking into that data, and the reading specialists at the elementary level, the ones looking into that. I'd like to see how it's been year over year. Is this just like a one-year enigma, or has this been consistently how they have? I'd have to go back and pull the data, which is pretty easy to do with the dashboard. But it is important that we have those practices, because if they are seeing a difference, then we should be implementing that across the district.
I mean, it's worth noting, it's really specifically around the achievement gap. In other words, it doesn't necessarily mean South Row is stronger overall in their math scores. It just means that their special education students are doing stronger.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's an interesting thing to dive into.
I recall that they did a presentation last year about some of their teams doing team teaching.
That's what I was thinking about, too.
Fourth grade in
Model that's
particular.
working very well for them over at South Row, so that, looking into that, certainly worthwhile to see.
Right, did like the fourth grade scores, was that what
Yeah.
brought it up?
Is there any impact at all on the numbers and the fact that, I think it's South Row has more special ed? Is there a difference in the number of special education students at each one of the elementaries?
Yeah, there could be a difference in the number of like just the head count, but you have to kind of get into the IEP itself and figure out what type of services are actually like required for the student. I don't think it's dissimilar from building over building, because when you take a look at the number of like IEPs that the special ed teachers are servicing, there's consistency across the 4 elementary schools.
But we have our autism programs, for instance,
Oh,
or,
I'm talking about like special ed kids that are in the general ed
Okay.
setting, just like for ELA support, reading support, things like that. We have very different programs for like our autism program at Harrington and Byam is completely different than the life skills program at Center or the Strive program at South Row. I was talking more about just the special ed student who's in a general ed classroom who's receiving like a little extra support, not in a specialized program.
yeah, so each elementary is not really, it's got a different population in terms of
True.
the composition of the students. Okay, thank you.
Very much so. And then moving on, I think one of the big things that out there, you probably heard in the news, is like, how are we doing compared to pre-pandemic levels, right? Everybody wants to know, it's the acquiring, information, so pull the data for that. Interestingly enough, we don't have like a huge gap between 2019 and 2025 data. So even at that exceeds, where it's a 5% difference from 2019 to 2025 for, exceeding, it's a 6% difference, and then same with the partially meeting and not meeting, it's 5% and 6%. So yes, it's down, but it's not an enormous gap from 2019 to 2025, which is good, right? That's a good thing. We're heading in the right direction. I think what's going to be very, very hard, though, is comparing things to 2019. Couple of things. One, we had legacy tests that was still happening. Then we moved to next gen testing. We changed standards. We changed proficiency levels, and we've now changed testing companies. So those variables that are out there, kind of, it's like inquiring for me. I'm always like, well, nothing's been the same since 2018, actually, right? Because we started making these big changes towards next generation testing, which is a completely different test than a legacy test. The students that were taking science were still in legacy for quite some time, right? They finally came up with a next gen test, and then all these other moving parts happened. So I'm like, how do those variables affect it? I may never get that answer, but I do know that I feel like every year we all say this is like something else has changed. And our new change is we went from Pearson to Cognia for a testing company. I don't know if that changed anything for this school year. We're going to find out.
Any variable that changes skews the data somewhat,
Well, that's
so.
right. We've been so, and you taught during this time too. Like we had the same test over and over and over again, and then things changed, and every year something changed. So like even changing the proficiency levels for the class of 2025 and 2026. I'm like, Okay, how does that affect everything? So we'd have to do some type of like linking to see what's happening. I have to leave that up to the mathematicians at times, but I'm always cautious of like before we go through this big overhaul or make these major changes, what else was affecting everything? I would be curious, and I don't know if I'm ever gonna find out, I know that we have, all the students participated, took the MCAS, but with the change in the law, was that a factor? Was it not taken as strong? I do know that many of our students at the high school level for the retests, even though they were scheduled for it, they didn't take it after that law was passed. They didn't have to. So that changes the data. So those are like my kind of questions that are out there when you look year over year. But if I'm looking just at 2019 and 2025, there's not a huge gap between how we performed, which is good. And that's ELA. You'll see this a little bit more of a dip for math, but again, it's not huge. You have to look at the different grade levels to see what is happening, and the same for science. Very, very small changes for science. We had the majority of the changes in their testing. So then I wanted to look at cohorts because, again, every year that I'm presenting this data to you, it's a new set of students. So if you look at year over year for how our students did from 2021, and 2021 test, remember, was not like the full test. They could take it at home. Some kids were taking it at home, some were taking it in school. That was our hybrid year. Overall, our data kind of stays pretty strong. So on the left-hand side is performance, so that's that meet or exceeds number. And then on the right is SGP. So it is pretty, like we have some ups and downs in certain grade levels, but you'll pretty much consistently see some of the same scoring for students based on how they've been doing. So that 2021 school year is a little hard to know how well they did because some of the students didn't even take it in school.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding how to read this correctly, when I was looking at this at home, I was operating in the assumption that to follow a single cohort of students, you look down diagonally. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the first box on the top left,
So third grade. right?
third grade in 2020, 2021 would then be under fourth grade for 21,
Correct.
22. Right.
Right, because that current third grade is fourth graders now. And then the reason you don't see third graders under SGP is because you have to have 2 years' worth of data. So they were third graders in the past, so it's really only fourth graders that you can have an SGP on. So then you'd go down diagonally that way.
Yep.
So the third graders are really your fourth graders are really your fifth graders right now, because this is all data from when they were in those grades last spring.
Yeah, and with 8th to 10th, you're actually looking 2 columns over. Yeah, it's interesting when you look at it that way because in some cases up and in some cases down, but even looking at the same group of kids from last year to this year, you see some pretty big swings.
Right.
And, like looking at what the 7th graders last year, 47% meet and exceeds. This year, 62%, that same grade of students meets and exceeds, which is a huge positive move.
Right.
And then you look like last year's 3rd graders, this year's 4th graders, everybody dropped
Right.
subtly. So it's an interesting,
There's no clear pattern.
yeah,
And
that's what I
I'm
was
typically
trying to.
used to seeing a clear pattern, and we don't have a clear pattern. So we're like, what do we do at this point? Like, we have to look at our internal benchmarks and how our students are doing and have eyes on them, right? Teacher eyes on them to, help us distinguish what they need and what they don't need. You can't take one single test anyway, but it does get a little difficult when, you're up, you're down, you're down, you're up. It gets a little crazy.
Yeah.
But it is good to look at a whole cohort of students and how they've been kind of progressing through. And remember, they're coming from COVID to going through things and, learning. So this still is the group that has learning loss. Same for math. So like you could be like, okay, well, they were up, then they went down, but now they're up again.
Yeah, I feel like the most standout drop in this case is 4th to 5th grade in math. The students that were in 4th grade 2 years ago in 5th grade last year
Right,
was the biggest drop. I mean, that's 20 percentage points. That's a lot.
right.
That's my older son's grade, and I've anecdotally heard from a lot of parents of kids that age that their kids' scores drop. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of drop, I think, just from last year to this year. If you recall, last year, the high school exceeded their targets, they were being celebrated, and now they don't have any of their points. So it's, you have to be careful with the celebration too, right, because it can change.
Yeah,
But I'd like to know a little bit more about the testing.
yeah. Yeah, that one was just the biggest, like 20%. I don't think any other distinctions, positive or negative, hit that 20-point mark. That's a big difference.
The other thing, if you look back the year prior, they had jumped 20 points.
Right.
Or 18
Right,
points.
49 to
So
67.
I know.
it's very
It was
difficult.
last year the aberration then, you know, what was it about fourth
Right.
grade?
Is there ever possibly even a disconnect between what the curriculum does in a grade and what's actually on MCAS? I mean, or is it?
Shouldn't be,
it
because
shouldn't
everything's
be.
aligned to the standards.
Yeah.
Especially in math, like math is pretty tight.
I was gonna ask though, if there has, I know, again, these are early days, but I'm wondering if there's a plan to look at whether there is a correlation between the students' performance on iReady and the students' results in MCAS, and if we are seeing that iReady is actually predictive of MCAS score, or if there's something very unique about the MCAS experience that's producing slightly different results than what their week-on-week results are showing.
We work with curriculum associates, and they typically ask us permission to,
See the MCAS.
to see the MCAS. We sign off on the thing, and they'll give us the information. With math, it's very dead on. The only variable for the reading, and it's pretty dead on for the reading too, but MCAS has writing.
Which
And
iReady
iReady doesn't, right? So, but they do, again, they're gonna lean on the mathematicians, some type of equal percentile linking. They are able to tease out the reading part of the MCAS to iReady to give us that predictor. So we actually have our meeting with iReady tomorrow to go over our beginning of the year data that we just finished our first diagnostic. So that would be one of the conversations that we have of like, do we want to participate in that to give us the linking again? And once we have that, that's something I could bring back to the committee and present, because it is interesting. It does
Yeah.
help us.
I mean, frankly, just from me never wanting to make assumptions, one of those assumptions I think we all make, not just in Chelmsford, but at many districts, is that these tools we use to prepare students for success are actually correlated with successful results. It would be nice to see that hard data either proven true, or are there places where it's not predictive? And
Yeah,
I think
because
that info would be
we wouldn't
useful.
want to continue with the tool if it's not helping us.
Exactly, yeah. Or if we determine that it is helping, but it is not correlated with the MCAS, I think figuring out what that gap might be, what's the difference?
All right, any other questions on MCAS results?
You don't want me to do my last slide?
Oh, I didn't.
skipping
Oh, it's the same one, sorry.
You don't want to hear about science?
No, I don't.
Your most favorite, I'm just teasing you. So, yes, and here's science. And here they are.
I already went to that slide, so.
Well, and what's interesting though, I have to note it, is you see the big, everybody's like, no, ninth grade, that is our students that take the biology MCAS as ninth graders, because they're in honors biology. So you are always going to see high numbers for your ninth graders, because those are students, your top students taking that.
There are already students who have like essentially signed on to take a more challenging course.
Yes, so our freshmen that are in honors they take it freshman year. Otherwise, students are slated to take biology their sophomore year.
So the thing right from the beginning that really stands out to me on this accountability by schools percentile, it's 67 at McCarthy and it's 65 at Harrington. Now, in terms of McCarthy, there's very little to compare it to internally or whatever, but in terms of the elementaries, wow, that's a huge difference among the schools. The disparity is there somehow, and I'm trying to figure out why that much disparity, because it goes from 65 to 81, and that's pretty big.
Yeah, we'd have to
So-
look at the subgroups. Harrington is a Title I school. It is the highest percentile of Title I, so it's got the highest percentage. So we'd look at the subgroups, because my hypothesis here is that one of the subgroups needs a little additional support. That's where we put the most of our interventionists as well. So that is one of our
Okay.
highest schools
So that is what we're doing. We are putting more help there.
at that school.
And then in terms of McCarthy, what do we do? Because it's not, moving people from Parker to McCarthy and so on.
Right, we have to look at, so those grade 7 and 8 students, that's some of the work that we started last year. I'm going to continue this year where we're doing those, looking at those focus standards, those foundational standards in math, because that's where the data is showing, and doing those specific lessons to try and progress monitor those students to make sure that those lessons are then spiraled through, because that's where we're seeing what the issue is. So we're going to do that work again this year. We saw some increases in grade 7, definitely, when we did that program. So we're going to be redoing that again this school year to really focus in on that because they need that support. We did try to put some interventionists at that level. It's very hard to get interventionists at that level. They have to know their mathematics. This is not a generalist. So it was difficult to actually get people to apply for the job. And we're happy to do so, but it's just getting the personnel to do it. So rather than trying to find somebody that's not there, that has the qualifications, we're actually going to be focusing in on those students again with those standards, those foundational standards, and giving them those specific lessons.
And that's in math.
That's in math.
And when we looked internally at the data, I remember last data points that we looked at the end of the school year last year, and that huge drop in performance between, 7th and 8th, going into the 8th grade. How does that correlate here? I mean, both of those grades are here at McCarthy.
No, I know. So say grade 7 made the change. Grade 8, one of the issues we run into too is the amount of testing that the grade 8 students take in the spring. So they have to do 3 MCAS now. So they have the civics, they have the math, and they have the ELA, plus they're finishing their benchmark. But that is that focus work that I'm talking about, that they'd have to go and make sure that they're teaching those foundational lessons and then seeing how the students perform. And then revisiting them again if they're not getting it.
Because I think part of this performance thing, to me, in those 2 grade levels, you are starting now to get how many teachers versus the number of teachers you had before. You're moving a lot more. And so it's not only, and you guys say it if I'm wrong here, but I think then you also have to have executive functioning skills that are much higher. And I think some people, keeping track organizationally, keeping track with the work, the different ways of teaching, all of that. I think some students, if that's missing, that it might be something we want to look at, that we just give them, just a couple of sessions on it or whatever to start off the year. Because a lot of people tell me this, when my child gets to that 7th grade level, they fall behind. And the reason they do is because they just aren't organized enough, or they're not doing the work when it's supposed to be handed in, that type of thing. So are we doing anything else that helps there?
I mean, they do go over this with them. They work with them. They also are going from a 2-teacher team to a 4-teacher team.
Right.
And the teams work together to try and organize the students. So they do that type of work. I just don't know if that's why they're not performing in math or.
Not even just in math, but overall.
Right.
I wanted to ask one more factor around the math performance at McCarthy. I know there is one big shift that happens in 7th grade, and that students historically have had 3 different levels of math that they could be kind of sorted into for the 7th and 8th grade levels. I have heard from my son's teacher that is shifting this year. And they're reconsidering what the requirements are to get into the different ones. That the new head of math is looking at changing that. And I was.
Oh, you're talking about the criteria.
The criteria.
Oh, I thought you were saying like they're not going to have the 3 levels. I'm like.
No. The criteria is shifting.
Okay, yeah.
And I was curious if that is at all in response to some of the data that's coming in. I guess my question is, are we tracking how those different cohorts of students receiving a different math experience in 7th and 8th grade are doing, related to the broader school performance, because I would imagine those students are getting very different learning experiences, and you would assume that the students in the honors track or accelerated track will be more likely to meet and exceed scores, but I'm curious if that is holding true and if the gaps are broader than they should be for other students.
Yep, so they have the honors, accelerated math, and then they have grade level math. I think what they're, and don't quote me on this because I will confirm with the math coordinator, I think what we're seeing is that more students were being put in grade level math that probably should have been in an accelerated math, right? So I think there's the criteria change that you're
Yeah.
hearing, is because I think students are being placed into something that they could actually be placed into a higher class. Right, they're being put into a grade level class, and they probably belong in accelerated class, so I think that's the criteria change. And that does change it, because it's the pacing, right? So, because your honors students are gonna get into Algebra 1 in 8th grade,
Right.
instead of waiting until they get to high school to
Right.
take Algebra 1. So that's how that track works. So I think what they're doing is making sure that the students are really placed, and then if those students are in a grade level math, that they actually are working more and spiraling back on those foundational math skills rather than to continue on. Because to continue on, it's not going to help if they don't have the foundational skills.
That said, has there been any thought about almost like an opposite consideration of if the students at that kind of grade level math class, if there is a need to help the students that are, let's say, in that group move out of that lowest performing bracket? Is there, I know you mentioned that there's certain like focus standards and things like that, but given the correlation between students who take algebra in 8th grade and people who experience success later on in high school, has there been any consideration of, I don't mean accelerating everybody, but setting more students up to be ready to do some of that more accelerated coursework in 8th?
So collapsing a level.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not the
No, I know.
educator, but I'm just curious if there has been any dialogue around that. And it may depend on where the gaps we wind up seeing in the data are, but.
That does come up. It's a debate. There's a lot of conversation around it, but I think that is something that has to be looked at, and I think that's what the math coordinator is looking at, is that why are so many kids in here that actually should be here based on some of the data we have? So I don't know if we'd go to a full collapse of a level, but it comes up every year.
Right, other questions on the MCAS results?
Is my question slide. I just want to make sure.
I had one,
Well,
but
half of it's coming up.
I had one, it's not 100% related, but MCAS used to be our graduation requirement. And just recently, the state came out with their visions of a graduate. And it made big hoopla, but what does it mean and where are they going with it? I mean, it's not really graduation requirements, it's just, I don't know.
No, it's a great question. So our high school goes through a NEASC process, which you've heard about, and it used to be, Vision of the Graduate used to be called 21st century learner, right? We used to have a definition of what's a 21st century learner, and that has now shifted to the vision of a graduate. It is really just about like, what do we envision to see students when they leave high school? What are the social skills? What are the academic skills? What are the civic skills? So that is what the vision of the graduate is about. Like, we, as a district, expect our students to be able to be global citizens that can, work collaboratively, those some of those almost like vision statements. So where it's a little bit of a confusion is we're following the NEASC process, and we actually have a small working group that's refining the vision of a graduate, but then the governor has her working group of a vision of a graduate. So we're waiting for that information to come out, and we're trying to figure out, do they get melded together? Because I feel like NEASC has a process. This is the discussion at the high school level, and we're going to talk to our NEASC rep when we meet next. But the high school's on this track to come up with a vision of graduate, and the governor's on this track. Do these tracks meet?
And how does that track play into graduation requirements?
It doesn't right now.
I know, but that's
Right,
what they're
and-
saying.
but
When
they're
they announce
talking
it,
about
like,
it.
but eventually we'll come out with the graduation requirements based on this. I'm like, well, how's this gonna tie into that?
And then they have a graduation requirement group, and but in the meantime, we had to come up with a CD
Right.
requirement that you voted on.
Yeah.
And we have to upload that to DESI. So we're all kind of in limbo right now, and we're just kind of going with what we've voted on, how we're working through it, and seeing where this governor's work is coming, because those are actually two separate groups. It's very confusing.
Very confused. That's why I asked.
Right, because even after you had all voted on it, they want us to upload like what our process is for it. I'm like, this is our process, but we will follow suit and we'll see how this works out. We're gonna be doing this together.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything
You don't have
different
to
this
do,
year?
right now, you don't have to do anything. Right
That-
now,
that was
the-
my
the
concern.
graduation requirement's the same.
Yep.
The high school's gonna continue on the vision of a graduate work that they're doing until we're told differently, or if we have to do some type of, grouping together. We'll hold hands and do it. The good news is we have teams that can do this. So we have like a NEASC team. We have subgroups that are working on this, so there are people to do the work. So right now, you have nothing to do.
All right, that's,
I'll
so
take
my,
care
I want to make sure we didn't have to make any program changes or graduation, okay.
No, we don't have to change any of our graduation requirements or our CD requirement that you have voted on for students taking those classes.
Perfect, okay. All right, any other questions on the MCAS?
Dennis, for a future meeting, just thinking that it would be good a few months from now to know, given these results, what then each school decided to do, even if they address it to us in their presentations or whatever they do. But just for example, what we just talked about, looking at the interventionists, more interventionists going in, maybe into Harrington and so on, where are we at with that? Seeing what's happening with, the grade 8, grade 7 to grade 8, if anything else has happened this year that may address these kinds of concerns that we talked about, just a bit of an update. Because, we get this wonderful data, but then what happens during an entire year?
Yep.
Yeah, that would be great.
Would that come out in each of the school
It would
improvement
have
plans?
to be, right, it would be in the school improvement plan.
Yeah.
And it would also be, if they, whatever they, like what they're presenting on.
Yeah, okay, because we did get a copy,
We
they
do.
did get the school improvement plan, so hopefully that would be.
Oh, yeah, they would have, but they would probably not base it off of MCAS because we don't get it in time. It would probably be off of iReady.
Okay, because what happens is maybe the improvement plan's gonna say, well, we're gonna hire these number of, but you're saying it's very difficult to get
Yeah, we have
interventionists in
hired our,
mathematics at a
yeah, we've
particular
hired our
level.
current interventionists
So
now.
what actually happened during the year? Were we able to do it? Weren't we able to accomplish it? What happened? So that, we can try to figure out, maybe we need to budget differently or do something differently that helps more to, change the academic. It's the most important, it's what we do, right?
That's the whole kind of purpose of
So-
school.
Yeah.
Last time I checked.
All right, any other
doing.
thoughts on MCAS or? any? Okay, we'll move on to strategic plan.
Sure, so, did you have this one?
do.
I can just
have
start to
it.
talk.
I have it.
Okay.
You keep talking.
So just to share some strategic plan work for you. Tess is back. So Tess is our contact from DM Group. She is back and we're transitioning. Maggie helped us last year. Tess is now going to be our point again, working with Hannah. So we're thrilled that she is back. We had our first kickoff meeting last week with the different strategic plan groups because at the end of last school year, if you can believe it or not, we're already going into year 4 of the 5-year plan. So it goes very quickly. But we, internally, the admin team had taken a look at the different actions and initiatives at the end of June before we left for the year. And then when we got together for our summer retreat, we also took a look at the different initiatives that we're going to align to the work, primarily, again, based on the iReady information, because we didn't get the MCAS information until the fall. But we wanted to see if there were different initiatives that were started that were going to continue, were there initiatives that were complete that were going to end, or were there any new initiatives? And we basically went group by group to update our strategic plan for the year. So as Tess would do, we'll just to ground us in the work. We have this overarching group that meets regularly every 6 weeks or so to keep us on track, broken down by the 5 different priority areas: academic achievement, equity, primarily special ed work, SEL, human capital, and operations and facilities. Again, between June and now is when we take a look at the map itself. We figure out our initiatives, as I just indicated, and we're really going to start shifting between now and the end of the school year into all the implementation and then the progress monitoring. Everything ties back to the initial mission, vision, and value statement that we put in place when we launched the strategic plan with our theory of action, our priority areas. And again, this has been, I think, very helpful in kind of guiding the work in the district. And as we'll see later, a lot of the school committee work and obviously the administration team's work is aligned to this plan. So when we met, go ahead.
I advanced it, it didn't.
Oh, okay. When we met last week with the group to review everything, we asked, you can go forward one more, we asked groups to kind of report out exactly where they were at. So on academic achievement, there's a couple of initiatives that are obviously continuing. They're going to have a new look this year, continued work on some of that mastery work with the 7th and 8th grade in particular. And then, as we mentioned in the subcommittee, one of the things that Linda and the teachers had noticed is needed emphasis specifically on the writing practices. So that got added as a new initiative for this year. But again, it's not like a completely different thing. It's something we always worked on, and it aligns with the overall goal and priority area for the year. So one of the things that we also do is we take a look each year at our rates, our actual rates and how we accomplish things. We look at our targets. From year to year, we will adjust them slightly. As Linda mentioned earlier in the meeting too, though, we have a little bit of an issue, and I don't know, like the next time we do the strategic plan, if we may want to have some goals that are actually like ranges that we want to fall within instead of just like particular numbers, but we don't want to be reactionary. And if a goal, goes, obviously if we overachieve one year, we want to make sure we're still challenging ourselves. Sometimes we'll increase the goal a little bit for the following year. If we have a goal that we didn't quite achieve, we don't want to just go dropping our target because we knew at the end of the 5 years, that's what we were still looking on. So I think it's okay to be, up or down a point here or there if we're still making our progress. But we asked each of the, you can slide, we asked each of the different groups to go through their areas, to update their data. We, again, globally, as we talked about when we had the meeting last week, over 80% of our initiatives saw advancement. Even if we didn't hit a target, there was growth tied to each of them, so that was excellent. The work is going to continue with equity this year, largely, again, using that 3rd and 8th grade levels as kind of our data points that we're watching. There's one new initiative with the para group. We'd spent a lot of time on the whole roles and responsibilities of paras last year. We're shifting now to focus a little bit more on the onboarding, the induction, and now the training program of the paras. So that's going to be kind of a crossover initiative between this group and the human capital group because Diane and HR is going to work on that. We actually had the kickoff meeting yesterday with a representative group of paras that the union identified and some administrators that we identified to get working on that. So I'm hoping that that's going to be another successful endeavor over the course of this year. Our SEL work in the district, these are all just continuing. I think, again, they made really good growth in certain areas. They're a group that meets regularly to take a look at the different panorama surveys and tools. They really do look carefully at their data, and I think they're on a really positive track. Human capital, again, we talked specifically, bless you, about that crossover new initiative that's going to be working with the equity group around para-educator onboarding, induction, and mentoring. And there are other initiatives we're continuing on into this year. And then lastly, in finance and operations and facilities, continuing with our short-term capital planning, which we're actually going to start at our next school committee meeting. We're still monitoring our buildings for cleanliness to APA standard. We were implementing our new work order system. And then we have 2 new initiatives that also tie to primarily the short-term capital plan, but it's standardizing the visitor management system that we now have in the schools because of the new secure entries that have been installed in each of the buildings. And then Bill's worked very hard with the technology group around security enhancements with the emergency notification system. We're piloting that this year at Harrington. It came out very well over the summer, but we want to make sure that we actually like the way that the system's functioning, it's working properly, because if we're going to implement that in other schools in the district, we want to make sure that we have standard protocols in place and that that's going well. So those, while they are new initiatives for this group, I think they're manageable and they do tie to the work on the short-term capital plan, which again, we're going to be starting next week. So in a nutshell, going into year 4, a lot of it is continuation work. among this particular group with some new initiatives that I think are going to hopefully push us over the edge a little bit on some of the targets to help us get there by the end of June of '26. So that is our strategic plan update for the year. And again, Maria and Susan and Diana are going to represent us on different groups when we meet, and you guys can kind of coordinate schedules. That draft schedule that I emailed out is the final dates. So those are the dates that we're going to have for the meetings. But we appreciate your contributions to those and hope you're willing to continue.
Any questions? This being year 4, when do we start to look at post this plan?
Well, Dennis, we're just starting year 4. We have to be happy.
I'm just saying, I'm just looking.
I know, we
looking ahead.
actually, I know, we did talk about that. It's amazing we're already going into year 4. So year 5 is a parallel year. So this year is going to be all just dedicated to these initiatives. But next year, we're going to be launching the year 5 initiatives, hopefully bringing this to a close. At the same time, we're going to start a process to develop a new 3 to 5 year plan. So that'll kick off next fall. Which I actually think is going to work well, even just like timing-wise for us and capacity-wise, because a lot of the work, say, for the building project is going to culminate by June. So by next June, we're going to have several key issues that are going to be decided. Our application's basically then going to be sitting with the MSBA for approvals before we get into schematic design and things. That all wraps up around May and June. Next fall, when we come back, we'll have our initiatives going for the fall. I don't think we're going to have to do the level of outreach that we did the first time, but we'll do an abbreviated version of focus groups for current, staff, students at the middle and the high school level, parents, obviously, certain groups like the LPAC, the SPED PAC, groups along those lines to get their input. And we'll spend next year 5 as we're implementing, also developing the next plan. And then the goal would be by the spring of '27 to actually have the plan be launched to get us for 3 to 5 years. So next year is going to be busy, but it's going to be a shift away from building while the designers working on the building project to us kind of honing in on the strategic plan.
Great.
In the next plan, the 3 years versus 5 years may actually become an important thing. Because I just think that things are moving along a lot quicker in methodologies and tools and so on used in education, that you might want a shorter term so that you can look at it again quicker in evaluating. I don't know, but I'm not going to be here, so. But honestly.
No, but those.
Don't say that, Marie. You never know. You never know.
Those conversations will all be on the table because we're going to just have to decide what we want. I think, when I look back at the 5 big areas, I can't say that those 5 big areas aren't going to still be our work in the next plan, but it might just be refinement. There may be just something new that we're thinking about. What, academic achievement's always going to be work for us.
Right.
Is there different grade levels we might want to target or things? Perhaps we'll have to get into that. We're always going to be working around equity issues and, trying to close the achievement gap between our special ed population and our general ed students. Like, I don't see that changing. But there might be new things that kind of come into play. But I think it'll be the will of the body, when we get there and when we get the feedback from the focus groups, whatever direction it's kind of lending us in. I think we do maintain some flexibility within the initiatives that we offer each year, so we always have that. But there is something to be said about whether it's a 3 or 5 year plan. At least as a district, we kind of know that that's where our focus is going to be in the relative short term. And that does help us from a budgeting standpoint too, because as we're putting budgets together, we make sure that the budget is aligned to support the plan. And I don't think you'd want to have like a year-to-year plan, because that would be very difficult to budget for and for schools to really operationalize. So I don't think you'd ever want shorter than 3 years. We can talk about it, but a 3 to 5 year plan, I think makes sense. But that will be a lot of work next year.
Great. Any other questions on strategic plan? All right, we'll move on to draft goals for school committee and superintendent. So I thank the assistant superintendent for helping to always organize it and put everything in the correct format and make it look pretty.
No problem.
A lot of these things, again, are carryovers, because we're still kind of basing our goals on the strategic plan. And there were a couple additional on the school committee side, professional goals related to like the building project and to AI. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at them. We'll take some comments tonight or suggestions if anybody has them. give them another couple weeks to brew, and then we can look to approve them for the next meeting. So any thoughts or comments on the school committee side? I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read through them or compare them, or.
I did, and I just wanted to say that I think it's a good idea that we have that professional practice goal around AI. I wonder if that goal should be strengthened where we make something around making a determination about how to move forward. I don't want to say that we will make an AI policy because we may choose not to, but something that shows that we aren't just attending PD, but that we're turning that PD into a plan for how we will determine a path forward around AI on the policy side. That was the only thing I was thinking, was sort of strengthening that to be more of an outcomes-based goal.
I understand what you're saying. I thought that was included somehow generally in the first one. To conduct, review, and update school committee policies.
I see what you're saying.
Support them. Do you see what I mean? Just thinking it's more generally there, because there was the other policy too that we want to make sure we adopt on the digital technology and so on, right?
Yeah, if needed. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think it might, or even if it just traces back to the first goal, and as needed, create any implicated policies.
Take a look at the wording and then see if we can come up with something. Great. All right, any other thoughts on the school committee side of things? Again, we're not going to vote them tonight, so we have another couple weeks to look them over. And if anybody does see something as they look through it, feel free to email me. And we can make some adjustments and have people look at them before the next meeting, and then hopefully be ready to vote on them at that point. Good. All right, how about on the superintendent side? And similar type of formatting?
Yeah, Linda helped me out with this one. And so it's formatted similar. It just mirrors and a few updates to some of the work that we completed last year. You'll notice in the facilities and operations, I just added a couple that relate to the business manager system standardization and the E&S system standardization. But the bulk of the work just ties back to the initiatives in the strategic plan.
What is the MyPath program that you mentioned in the academic?
That's the iReady.
I know, but that's.
So what it is after students take a diagnostic,
Okay.
it levels where they are, and then it gives them lessons to help, almost like a building block, to help them increase their ability to meet those standards.
So are we looking to push it more? I mean, what's a goal?
Yeah, so it's a goal because it requires, timing at the school, like at least for the 1 through 8 students, 45 minutes in math, 45 weekly in ELA, and 30 minutes at the K level. So making sure those students are actually hitting the time and passing the lessons, because they could do as much time as they want, but if you're not passing a lesson, somebody has to do some reteaching.
Okay.
I think, again, to Linda's point, just kind of digging into the use, it's extra functionality we have within iReady that we believe if it's well used by students and teachers, it will help them. I think we'd like to see the usage improve and actually show the students and the staff that if the usage improves, then here's what we can expect based on iReady scores, which will correlate to MCAS scores. So that's a point of focus for the year.
And in the superintendent goals, when we look at it, for example, the meaningful integration of technology in our curriculum. When you use the word technology, is that inclusive of AI? What is that?
Which one are you in?
I'm looking at the last one here, but throughout, when we're looking at the word using technology in a classroom, integration, all of that, does that include AI?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see exactly where you're referencing, but I mean, I would generally say AI is a technology that we're going to have to figure out as a district, how we're going to be using it. Like, and it was great that we were able to get that individual to sign on to the session with us in early November. I'll obviously be participating with you with that, and I've invited Bill Silver as well. because we'll be actually kind of doing the work in the district. But I would think AI is technology related, and whatever we decide we want to move forward with, like how we're going to actually implement it, how we're going to share with staff and students, like the expectations and how to use it.
So you're
I would say that that's included.
And looking to it at the academic goals, I mean, going full circle, one of the goals is 7th and 8th grade math, so I think that's very,
Yeah.
very appropriate given what we just were discussing, so.
Right.
Right, any other thoughts on the superintendent's goals? Any other things you would like to see or any modifications?
And this is something, honestly, over the next couple of weeks, too, if you see anything, if you just shoot it to Dennis or I am happy to take a look and, if it's a rewording or tweaking and you want something in or out, a different point of emphasis, as long as it's aligned to something we're working on, I'm fine with it. If you let me know, we're not expected to vote on this tonight either, but if you let me know, we can review it, queue it up, and bring it back in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
All right, so if we're
And
good with that,
I thank Linda for putting
Yes.
putting it, formatting together.
I could never
Thank you.
format stuff like that. It's all over the place.
Favorite thing to do.
All right, moving on to the meeting presentation schedule.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the meeting presentation schedule with you for the year because I know a few people had asked about when we're going to be having schools and different departments come in. So pretty standard, we're going to ask, well, we did ask the schools to try to focus on selecting the first meeting date of the month for a school presentation, and then the departments to come in for the second meeting date of the month. That's why you'll see some blanks, but we're going to start actually next meeting with the Fine and Performing Arts right down the line. I know, Maria, you had actually asked specifically for SPED to be there.
Yes.
So we're going to have SPED present with CHIPS. Because CHIPS, on May 19th, CHIPS is the,
All right.
obviously the preschool program, but which is predominantly special education. And she'll be able to actually kind of work from there to show a whole continuum of programs in the district from pre-K all the way to 12. That just seemed to make sense.
Okay.
So that's why that's together there.
Great. I have,
Is
yeah, sorry.
no, you were asking,
No, honestly, sorry.
is this fixed? In other words, is this a definite schedule?
So the schools and the coordinators are the ones that kind of pick these dates.
Okay.
Something can come up. And like if something ever comes up in someone's personal life or if something happens in a school, what I ask them to do is just between themselves, just flip it so that we can try to
Sure.
have only one per meeting and we don't get like doubled up. But I mean, this is pretty much what they've agreed to at this point.
Okay, that's fine. I was just wondering if it was not yet fixed. I was going to say that given all the conversation around math tonight, I wondered if that one should come sooner in the year. But if it was selected by the folks themselves, I know this is
Yeah.
outside of their regular hours. I don't think.
And there's nothing to
That's
say, I think I'd almost probably just leave it like this because I don't know what else it would affect. But there's nothing to say that we can't have another focus on a different evening if we have a topic that comes up that we want to have someone else in for just for an extra thing. I mean, maybe it's just to talk about a particular project we've got going on or a particular initiative. We could do that even outside the department presentation. So nothing precludes us from hearing more from people, but this at least gets everyone on the agenda at least once over the course of the year.
I think it would be good, for me personally, I would like to see if the schools, for example, at the high school level and the middle school levels, and even at the elementary level, what they're offering in terms of extracurriculars, which would mean the clubs and activities and the leadership ideas and all of that. And the reason I'm saying that is because I am getting a lot more, and I don't know how about everybody else, but I am getting a lot more on, whether we are providing enough in terms of stipends and so on for leadership, leading the clubs, and whether we have enough student participation, and students still find some of the activities that they're participating in sufficient for preparation for moving forward and so on. And I think as we incorporate more and more what's going to have to happen with the AI and so on, the technologies, that it's really important to have those other skills that are being developed through teamwork and relationship building and all of these things that happen in these clubs and activities, including sports.
I don't disagree. The only thing I would suggest is we really don't have extracurriculars at the elementary level.
Right.
Because they start
I know.
in fifth grade. So I mean, I definitely can ask Parker McCarthy in the high school.
Yeah.
Because they have the numbers and they can certainly report on what they do. but I just, we don't really do
Right.
because of the age level elementary. But those 3 schools, at least, I can ask to make sure they touch on it.
They have extracurricular in the sense that they have their student councils and those things,
Yeah.
which do develop some.
Oh,
of
you
them.
mean at the elementary level?
They do.
Yes, I thought you meant like only after-school offerings.
No.
You mean even just
I mean, to-
opportunities during the
What they
day?
have, the opportunities to develop those additional skills.
Okay.
That I think are becoming more and more
Can I
imperative.
expand it then to be like extracurricular or like student leadership opportunities?
Right.
Okay.
I'm getting quite a few of those. I don't know about everybody else here, but some people are approaching me about, okay, what's going on with that?
Yeah, I can ask them to touch on that.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts on the schedule? Any groups missing from the list that you looking to hear from? Okay, I think somebody's right is here.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay. All right, if not, we'll move on to the MASC resolutions, so.
Thanks,
We
Patrick.
have our yearly conference coming up in November, part of which is the delegate convention where they vote on various resolutions. From my understanding here, it looks like there's only one new resolution and then like 7 continuing resolutions. So we can go through them. Again, hopefully everybody had a chance to read through the whole resolution. I'll just read through like the therefore be it resolved, and then we can have a discussion, and then we can take a vote, and then after all is said and done, we'll see if anybody is available to be our delegate, can then cast our votes for that part of it, okay? All right, so the first resolution is, Resolution 1 is removing BMI testing from schools. And again, just skipping to the be it resolved. Therefore, be it resolved, that MASC urges the removal of BMI screening requirements from all public schools. And be it further resolved that MASC urges the express banning of BMI screening in all public schools. So I believe, I don't know how much BMI testing they do, or they just, if they ever even use it in schools anymore. I know they did back when I was in school, they did that, but I don't even know if it's still something that's being done. Maybe it's being done some places, not others. But it seems like they want to get rid of it, which I get. I mean, it's kind of an outdated way of looking at body type, but any idea what if we do it or not?
I know that they do the screenings, I just don't know what they do with the information. We'd have to talk with Peggy Gump, our Director of School Nursing, to find
I
out.
believe it's a state letle requirement still, so I think the advocacy that they're urging would be not only to discontinue its use, but to expressly remove it as a requirement for all districts.
Anybody have any thoughts, positive or negative, or?
Well, and parents, I think, can opt their children out. Same thing even with the scoliosis
Right.
screening, so there's a lot of
Okay.
ability with that.
Any,
There's a lot of discriminatory thoughts built into BMI. I know that. And I don't know, for me, I think the data is gathered and nothing is done with it.
I also think it's, aside from what you said, that it can be used for discriminatory purposes. I don't think most schools are, but I also, unless our schools are required to provide some sort of health-related interventions that become clinical in nature, I'm not sure what the benefit is from gathering that data in schools. I feel less strongly about the banning of the screening, but I do feel like it should not be a requirement.
I agree. I don't think it should be a requirement. I think we'd be better off encouraging parents to keep regular health checkups with their primary care physicians and their pediatricians than worrying about reporting what the BMIs are on kids. I just don't think it's worthwhile.
yeah,
It's already required that students, present proof of a physical every 2
Right.
years, right? So,
I have to agree with it. Therefore be it resolved, I have no problem. The banning, I don't, if they didn't have that second sentence, I think I'd be fine with it. I mean, express banning of BMI, what happens if, I don't know, you're doing a health class and you're doing a unit on nutrition, you want to talk about BMI as a measure, as part of that, I don't.
it's not saying you can't discuss what BMI is, it's banning it as a
Screening tool.
universal screening. And I do think, as a universal screening, it's been relatively proven to be an inaccurate way of measuring a student's health.
Right. Other thoughts on this? Okay, why don't we take a motion to
Okay.
approve or,
Okay.
approve Resolution 1, and then we can go from there.
I move that we approve Resolution 1, removing BMI testing from schools as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor of Resolution 1,
Aye.
Aye.
or 0? Right. All right, I believe all the other ones are reauthorizations. I don't think there's any other set ones, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reauthorizations. So these ones have been up in the past that have either been approved or not approved. I don't know if they've been approved and then nothing ever happened to them, so they want to put them out there again, or maybe they were voted down before and they want to bring them back again. But we can go through them, and again, we can discuss and see if we approve of the continuing resolutions. Okay, so the first one is regarding sanctuary laws for transgender students, which I believe we've seen this one before. It says, therefore be it resolved that Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Greaton General Council to join with other states in the passage of the so-called sanctuary laws to ensure such children and their families have the power of enjoying in safety and tranquility the natural rights and the blessings of life as guaranteed by the Constitution of the Commonwealth.
Well, who doesn't wish for that?
Um,
For all children.
So any thoughts before we take a motion? All right, we'll take a motion on,
I move that, that we approve
yeah,
the regarding sanctuary laws for transgender students as presented.
Second.
okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Or 0. All right, next one is increasing the maximum balance allowed by the Special Education Reserve Fund. Therefore, be it resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to amend Chapter 40, Section 13E by deleting 2% of the annual net school spending by inserting the following 5% of annual net school spending. So I think this is the account we have, right? Is this the one we have or no? The Special Education Reserve Fund, is that the one we set up?
Yeah, that's what we
It
said.
was set up.
So right now, we can only have 2% of our, they
Right.
want to put it,
I think the higher amount is a good idea,
Yeah.
because things are getting more and more
All right.
expensive.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
and from the description, it seems like other times find it more tenuous than, we have a nice little thing on the side and we need in case of emergency break glass, but it looks like other towns use it a little bit more freely, so they're just looking for.
If you increase it from 2 to 5, it only gives us more flexibility. It doesn't hurt.
Doesn't
anyway.
mandate. Right.
So I think it's good.
I agree.
Okay?
All right, we'll take a motion.
All right, I move that we we approve the increasing the maximum balance allowed by the Special Education Reserve Fund from 2% to 5% as presented.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'm used to John being here doing the second.
All right, moving on, next one is membership on the Board of Education, of Elementary and Secondary Education. Therefore, be it resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls for the enactment of legislation to repeal the provision of Massachusetts law that prohibits practicing educators and sitting school committee members from serving on the Board of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education. Be it further resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls for legislation to reconstitute the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education by including members with expertise as licensed educators and members with expertise in public school governance. So I believe this one's been on before, too. They just want to allow teachers and school committee members to be on the board, which I don't necessarily think is a bad idea,
Makes sense to me.
you know?
There's way too many business interests that wind up on those kinds of
Right,
boards. I
that's
think
Sure.
counterbalancing that with the practitioners and policymakers makes sense.
Yeah, and I can assume this is one that's been approved before, but then the state legislature probably didn't.
Has not yet moved.
Right, move forward. So I'll take
I move that we approve membership on the Board of the resolution for membership on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to change as presented.
Second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, next resolution, preserving the local governance of Massachusetts schools. Be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to restore local governance and accountability to Lawrence and Southbridge Public Schools no later than July 1st, 2026, recognizing that Holyoke was removed from receivership on July 1st, 2025. Be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Massachusetts Legislature to enact legislation to limit any future state takeovers to a term of no more than 3 years. Your thoughts? I know what they're saying.
I understand what
Lawrence
they're
has been in there for what, 8 years, 10
They
years?
can't get out.
Yeah, they can't get out.
But, again, it doesn't impact me.
Right,
So
right.
I don't really have a position on this.
Yeah.
It's, I see both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot community by community.
Yeah, I think my main concern is that when you look at the cases in recent years of state takeovers of local school districts, there is limited evidence that there is actually positive outcomes, sustained positive outcomes in terms of student results, in terms of long-term sustainability. And so, I think the idea of a long-term dependence on that state, it's not good on anybody's account, I think, for this really long-term requirement of them to follow state leadership, state governance, sorry. Because when you look at the actual data for how these districts, it's not like they improve more and more over the 8 to 10 years that they're under receivership. You tend to see some gains relatively early on, and then it peters out.
I would agree with that. I don't know if I like the first part where we're voting to tell the state to take Lawrence and Southbridge off, because I don't think that's our prerogative to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's what my concern would be there. Because and I know there's, I teach in Lawrence, so I know there's still issues in Lawrence
Yes.
on a local level too, and the state level, and, so.
I feel like the state has some responsibility to have that kind of oversight
Yeah.
on failing districts. I don't know enough about the data at all to comment on that part, but I am also a little concerned with just telling them to let it go.
Okay.
All right, we'll take,
You want me to do it in the negative or
no,
the
just do it
positive?
positive, and we can vote one way or the other.
I move that we approve the Preserving Local Governance of Massachusetts Schools resolution as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 1, all those opposed? 3, on 3. All right, next one, personal financial literacy education. Be resolved, that MASC file legislation that would have the effect of ensuring that all students have exposure to personal financial literacy curricula and ultimately graduate from high school with lifelong knowledge of how to be fiscally responsible to avoid being deterred by financial woes. This legislation should ensure that students at various levels would benefit from curricula in Massachusetts public schools, which would include content in personal financial literacy. Okay, where we gotta fit it in though? This is my, I guess.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Well, the irony to this one is that, and I think it's good, kids should know about financial literacy, and we do provide that through different forums, but it's just ironic where most of the times the group is saying, we don't want to be told what to do, but then all of a sudden here, they're telling districts what to do. Again, I don't think it's bad information, or kids obviously should get that, and we do that in a lot of our classes anyway. I think I'm just more curious about exactly like what the parameters they'd be putting on this are. Is it particular grade levels? Is it a particular curriculum? Who teaches it? It's just a little vague for me on that one, but I don't conceptually think it's a bad idea, but it's just rather ironic.
Yeah.
The other thing is the rationale behind it. If you read it, it's about planning for college and so on. I think the financial literacy stuff is not only for that, it's so much more. And shouldn't be focused on only that, but.
well, it does talk about other goals
Yeah.
being best option for, use of credit cards, securing personal loans, et cetera. I think for me, the reason I do support this, aware that it's not like we're approving a law. We are approving advocacy, which results in many different things. But I think the reason I'm in support of this is because there's a lot of research showing how inequitable students' access to support around financial planning is. Students who do not have parents who were college graduates really struggle with financial planning around college. And other financial planning is less likely to be available to them because of access to the people who have that expertise around them. So I think by establishing an expectation that every student in the Commonwealth has access at some point in their career in that school district to support around financial literacy is, I think, a critical goal. I do think it's important that it does not mandate when or if it needs to be a full class or credit-bearing course or anything like that. It's saying that they should ensure that there's exposure to personal financial literacy curricula, and I think that gives enough flexibility for districts to do that in a variety of ways.
All right, we'll take a motion.
I move that we support the personal financial literacy education provision here as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 4-0. I believe this is the last one. Establishment of a regional school committee assessment reserve fund. Therefore be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to enact or amend legislation which permits municipalities to establish a regional school committee assessment reserve fund. That's all it is.
So I'm just making sure I understand this one fully. This was the one I struggled the most to understand. Maybe it's because I have no background in financial literacy, but
Ironically.
right. This is giving the regional school districts the ability to create a reserve fund. It is not setting aside a reserve fund from state funds. Is that correct?
I read this differently.
Okay.
Now, and I could be off base. I think what this is doing is allowing municipalities who feed a regional school district, that the municipality could have a reserve fund to be able to offset like spikes in tuition. So like a town of Chelmsford could
Right.
establish a reserve fund if they wanted to help offset like Neshoba, because we send kids to Neshoba. And it's all based on the number of kids who get admitted one year. Now, we're pretty fortunate that it's relatively flat and Paul's able to budget for it. It's not like huge spikes. But I have to think statewide, there are some smaller communities that maybe in a given year, if you have 6 or 8 or 10 kids that go to a regional school that you didn't budget for, that could be pretty substantial money-wise. So if the municipality, they don't have the ability right now to have a reserve fund for that, well, this would allow it to happen. So if they wanted to kind of squirrel aside, if they had free cash at the end of the year and they wanted to put some money into an account, that could help them just offset a big spike in regional assessments. That's my read of it.
So it is, I was correct in that it's enabling any given municipality to set that aside. It's not
municipality-
advocating for the state to set aside.
No, it would be the municipality in their own, just being able to kind of have that kind of a reserve fund, not the state, and it doesn't go directly to the regional school. It just allows the municipality to tap from it in an extraordinary year.
And it has to go to the municipality's legislative body for acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so like for
So-
us, the select board would have to be in agreement.
Right.
It would have to go to town meeting.
Right.
Town meeting would say yes, and then that could be a fund that they could, if they wanted to, put money into. It's almost like our special ed reserve fund, how we have money there just in case of an extenuating case.
I don't know enough about this at all, but I'm wondering if it's even speaking more toward true regional school districts, like Acton, Boxborough. The 2 towns have to come together and they have to equally put money into their budgets for their high school. Groton, Dunstable, there's quite a lot of regional districts where at a certain grade level, there's now a regional school. Maybe it's to make sure that they're prepared to fund that in a more equitable way.
Well, I don't think it's to fund in a more equitable way, but it could, to your point, I mean, if and I don't know these communities enough, but like if one community was having a difficulty adding on or the spikes were high, maybe they could have a fund that they could use it to like smooth things out a little bit. But I honestly don't know enough about this because it doesn't directly pertain to me, but that's just my read of it. I think it's just allowing the municipality the flexibility to be able to do it. It's not saying that they have to do it.
Yep.
It just gives them like a tool if it ever got approved.
And this clearly must have come from districts that feel that need.
Silver Lake.
In the Silver Lake region.
But it might, others may have the same.
Right.
Right, no, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take a
I,
motion.
I move that we support the establishment of a regional school assessment reserve fund as presented.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Right, the other thing is, we need a delegate to go to the delegate convention. It is on Friday.
When is it?
At
Friday
3:15.
afternoon of the conference.
I know, I personally, I'm going Wednesday, Thursday, I will not be there Friday. I don't know if anybody else is planning on being there Friday at that point in time, and if you would be willing to serve as a delegate.
Want to be.
You want to be?
I don't, I didn't.
Dana,
I
are
did
you doing it
once,
again
and
this
once
year?
was
And are you going to be
plenty.
there?
I will be at the conference again this year. I was planning on leaving after lunch on Friday because I
Yeah.
have some things coming that weekend. So if nobody else can do it, I can give people an answer at a later date, but I could not commit to doing it today.
Do we have to take a vote today on it?
No, we have to do it by the 20s, get our delegate in by the 20-something.
I'm sure they would even take it later.
Yeah,
mean,
there
if we
was a
did it for
date,
the
that's
next
why I wanted to
meeting.
get it on now, but I think we had a little bit more.
I think we
Alright.
should nominate John.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. Well, he
He's
did
going,
say he's
right?
gonna go for 4 days, right? All right, well, we can wait. If you wanna check your, your schedules, we'll
Yeah,
check with
for
John
me,
when
it's
he's
just seeing how
here.
the chips fall on a
And,
few
you know,
plans.
That I can't.
Is there, if we can't go, if we don't have someone that can
Yeah.
go, is there a way to just like record your votes?
I don't know, that's a good question.
I would take a guess that the answer is no, because let me tell you, almost every single thing changed dramatically while we were there last year. In fact, I was gonna advocate that whoever is designated should be given the leeway to, in as much as possible within the integrity of our votes, potentially shift their vote based on changes made to the resolutions. Almost every resolution goes through a huge change before it's ultimately voted on.
This is why I asked if you were going to be there, because you're now an expert.
I don't know about that. I definitely got an education in it last year, though, and there were definitely several instances where I truly didn't know how I should vote to uphold the integrity of what our intentions were as things shifted. And at the end of the day, everybody just turned to me and just said, if it's shifted dramatically, just vote what you think is the right answer. But I felt weird about it because it was different than things we resolved at times. So I would just say whoever is going, we should add that sort of explicitly, permission to interpret, what is most in alignment with our committee's decision.
Makes sense. All right, so we'll hold off on that till next meeting, until John's here, and then, we'll go from there. All right. Very good. Next is a new policy. You wanna?
Yes, so I'll give you the overview, and I actually mentioned to Dennis, I looked back at our policy manual, and the way that we're actually supposed to approve, like, new policies, is to put them on a couple of agendas. So the first time it's on an agenda is just for discussion purposes. So that's why I just labeled it discussion. So I'm just going to give you an overview, no action tonight on the policy, but I'll put it on for the next meeting, and then that's considered the action meeting, just to kind of get in a little habit of the way we do brand-new policies. So we all got literature from MASC and the state, not too recently, it was right towards the beginning of the school year, so it must have been early September, about changes to the whole CTE admission process, which affects like Neshoba Tech, which is our sending school. So a little bit of background. We have a very good relationship with Neshoba Tech. We have some of our 8th grade students every year select that as an option, and, they go, they're very well serviced, and they have a good experience. There's 8 member districts in Neshoba, and we work with Denise very well. So I guess we're not the test case for this. I guess there are other schools in the state where the school district, the sending district, and the tech school don't necessarily get along. So they don't share information about kids, they don't promote each other's events or opportunities and things like that. So the legislature last year actually put a new law or new regulation in effect, and that's what this is the result of. It basically says that we're considered the sending district. but we have to work with Neshoba. And what Denise did, she was super. She called the little convening of all the 8 districts, gave us a little bit of the background. We developed kind of a draft policy all amongst ourselves that conforms with the reg. And it basically just calls out, what Neshoba offers, how we're going to share information to our 8th grade, even I think 6th, 7th, and 8th grade families about their option. If kids want to go to the tour, they can. So this just kind of delineates that whole thing. We have to have an actual policy to that effect. We have to submit this to DESE by sometime in, I think, November 1st. The school, the regional school, then has to do something differently because I guess there was some question about some of, not Neshoba, but other districts, who they accepted in, and was it really a fair process? So they actually have to implement a lottery now to take kids into their schools. It can either be a blind lottery, it can be like a weighted lottery. They had to go through all kinds of criteria to determine that. And they have to submit their policy to the state that basically says, here's how we're going to do admissions. So I guess statewide, there was a whole big thing going on that just didn't affect us. So we didn't honestly pay too much attention to it. I didn't even think that as a sending district, we had to do anything. I thought this was just going to affect Neshoba, say, having to have a lottery type thing. But lo and behold, we have to have a policy in place that just says how we're going to information share and how we're going to work with our tech school. So long and the short of it, DESE came out with a little list of things that you had to meet. We met with Denise, and the 8 districts kind of drafted this little policy. It's customized for Chelmsford because other districts might have other regional schools that they enroll to. Some have like 2 different schools that they enroll to. Some offer different programs. But this is basically like a Chelmsfordized version of the policy that would meet the DESE regs. And it, quite honestly, it already delineates what we do. So it's not really a change in practice for us. So that's why it's before you tonight, just for information and for reading. Happy to talk about it tonight. We'll put it on for the next meeting as an actual action item. So that night you would actually vote to approve it.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, so I've seen the Commissioners Weekly that this is now a statewide thing. So essentially what we are approving is our version of a thing that every single school district is going to have to be approving on
Correct.
in one way or another. The only thing I had a question about is MyCap, which I know what MyCap is. It's a technology platform-based way for students to do long-term future planning. Do we use that at the middle school level currently at, say, McCarthy?
Yeah, I actually talked to Shannon Bischoff about this. So 7th and 8th grade, yes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the technology platform. I think that's coming. Like the state, I do think, is going to try to push everyone down using this technology. It's basically like almost like a rubric or like lessons that kids need to achieve, actually dating all the way back to 6th grade. So we are going to do a little bit of work with Josh Lag, the principal of Parker, and some of the 6th grade, but to integrate these different lessons that are part of MyCap. I do think eventually it's going to be formalized into actually using that whole software program and everything, but for the time being, you basically just have to, more like the curriculum, you have to make sure you're covering all the different lessons and things like that.
Oh, yeah, so it was my understanding, this is from several years ago, and mostly with high schools, that MyCap, there were any number of platforms it could be used with, but that most schools integrated it with their SIS in some way or another. But in any case, that was my question, is whether it would be a shift for us to move that back to the
In
middle school
practice,
level
we're
or no?
basically doing the required MyCap lessons. We might actually just do a little bit more work with the 6th grade because the focus has been 7th and 8th right now.
Yeah.
But it's not going to impact anything we're doing.
But from the state side, it's 6 to 12, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
My question on this is about the pathways, because we have pathways too.
Correct.
So, to me, this is a bit confusing, because when so this is only for the technical school?
This is just how we're going to relate to the technical school. Aside from all of this stuff that we do with Neshoba and like they have their open houses and things, we do the same through Chelmsford High School. So Chelmsford
Right.
High School, because they're already our kids, we don't have to share information with them. They have access to it. So they market to our kids.
But our middle schoolers need to learn about those pathways and so on that
Yes.
we also offer
Correct,
at this same time that
Correct.
they're being exposed to this.
correct.
So that's my question.
Yes, so-
Shouldn't the policy apply not only, no?
Well, we don't have to have,
It's only for
we
this.
don't have to have a policy that pertains to
Oh, I
anything
see.
that we,
Okay.
we do. This is really just because of the whole
Yeah.
regional school.
Okay, because honestly, I think it's very important that students be given the option if, if they're gonna go into technology or engineering or whatever, being given the option of either going there or staying with our system,
Correct.
which might,
So we're actually, and I talked to Steve about this, we're advancing, like when we usually roll out like the high school tours and discussion about these programs, our dual enrollment programs, all the different options Chelmsford High has to offer. This is basically kind of kickstarted us to have that conversation to make sure, although we're not in competition, we want to make sure that the kids, if they're receiving
Get
this
the best
information
path
from
for
the tech
them.
schools. But in the fall, they're also receiving information from private schools, parochial schools, all of those.
right.
Central Catholic,
Easy,
all of
easy.
those schools
Knew that was
competing for kids. So we want to make sure like Chelmsford High is also out there marketing. It's just, we don't have to have an agreement saying we're going to share information with Chelmsford High. They already have the information and
Okay.
they can educate and work with the kids already. But we definitely, when the high school comes in, even if you'd like, for their presentation, because it's a little later, I can make sure that they talk about how they're reaching out to the 7th and 8th grade families to make them aware of the programs.
Yeah, okay, that
Yeah,
sounds good.
I think here, I feel like there's a distinction between what is actually being implemented at the school level and what we need to do to just essentially conform with the state's new requirement around the policy.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so we'll have, again, 2 weeks to stew on it. If anybody has any thoughts, they want to email superintendent
Yeah,
or
email
myself.
me ahead of time if you'd like, if there's anything you want, but it's pretty boilerplate. And again, Denise was super to work with on it, and I think it covers us. So we'll take it up for actual action at the next meeting.
All right, lastly, some of the field trips.
We do, we just have 2 field trips. Speaking of student leadership opportunities, Maria, the McCarthy Middle School would like to take a select group to the Student Leadership Conference at SNHU for just a day trip up to Manchester, New Hampshire in October. And then the Chelmsford High School has selected the location, the Atkinson Country Club, for their senior prom, which is going to be on June 3rd.
Okay.
So just requesting permission for these 2 out-of-state trips.
Right.
Here we go. I move that we approve the field trip by McCarthy Middle School Student Leadership by students of McCarthy Middle School to the Student Leadership Conference on October 16, 2025 at Southern New Hampshire University, Manchester, New Hampshire.
Second.
Okay, any questions about the field trip? All those in favor? Aye.
I move that we approve the field trip by Chelmsford High School students to the senior prom class of 2026, June 3rd, 2026, at Atkinson Country Club in Atkinson, New Hampshire. It's their prom.
Second.
Okay, any questions on the prom?
No.
Did they go there last year?
No, that was 2 years ago, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's a nice venue, that's why I
It is
asked.
a nice venue.
All right, we have a second, all those in favor? Aye. 4-0.
I do think New Hampshire should be paying us every field, I feel like every field trip that we approve is to New Hampshire somewhere.
Well, I know, but you don't see the ones we're going to a mass
Right.
because
We
you don't
only
have.
have.
Oh, wow,
We
I
only
see.
have to
Oh,
approve
it's-
it
oh,
state.
okay,
Oh, yeah,
all
this is
right,
ones, yeah.
thank
There's
you.
probably a lot more.
Yeah, right,
That's good.
Sturbridge Village and
right.
all this stuff, yeah.
We're gonna have the other states start competing.
All right, I believe that's it. Any liaison reports?
I went last night to the South Row PTO meeting, and there's a lot of emphasis on gearing up for the pumpkin fair on the 18th. Sign right outside the administration building around that, open to the entire community from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the 18th. They are also beginning to gear up for this year's 4th grade student council. They've already received a large number of applicants, and every year that seems to be a bigger group. So let's see if this year's class keeps that up. The school has a team really diving deep into multi-tiered systems of support being provided at the school level to differentiate for different students who need different kinds of interventions. So that has been a sort of behind-the-scenes emphasis. And And for those who were following the fact that last year there was that big $20,000 prize that somebody got through the Box Tops program, they are focused, there is a separate committee working on that is focused likely on playground equipment that is geared toward younger kids, because some feedback has been that some of the younger kids find some of the more acrobatic structures on the playground less accessible. So that may be a focus for what they decide to do with the funds. So that's it for South Row. Great meeting. They all felt curriculum night went well, and they're really excited about the updates coming together really well in the front of the building for the secure entryway, and for the improvements around the roof that are expected to come next year. The McCarthy and Parker PTOs have their first meeting this upcoming Thursday, so I'll report at our next meeting.
All right, anybody else?
I went to Chip's PTO meeting last night. Their board is all new on the board, so they're definitely feeling their way and how to run everything, but they have plenty of fun enrichment things going on, which is what they mostly do there. They just finished getting their orders in for their spirit wear, so if you have a child who goes to Chips, they're having a spirit day on Tuesday, November 25th to wear your new gear, or on Wednesday, December 10th. They have to be really careful there because not everyone comes every day. So they have to alternate what they do. Like 1 month they'll have something on a Tuesday and the next month they'll have something on a Wednesday, so that everyone gets to go to at least half of the events. So they really work with that very carefully to make sure that it's fair for everyone. Their picture retake day is November 13th. There was some confusion about how that would work with the little guys, but if anyone's listening and your child either did not get their picture taken or you would like to have it retaken, that's when it will be, November 13th. If your child doesn't attend that way, just let the school know and they'll have a time for you to come in and bring your child to get their picture done. They were asking again if there will be any funding from the superintendent to help support teacher appreciation events. So,
Depends what kind of mood I'm in.
oh, yeah.
Yes, I gotta get a message out to them.
Okay, so you'll get a message out to them. They were asking about that. Yeah, so they're working hard.
So I'm part of the Wellness Committee, and we had our first meeting this year. The Wellness Committee will once again focus on the fair, the Wellness Fair. So the whole meeting really was a discussion of what we're going to do in terms of getting that all going together. And this year, it will be at the high school in the gym, March 6th of 2026. More multicultural inclusiveness, that type of wellness activities, we're going to try hard to promote presentations on that. Okay, and I attended the CHS PTO meeting on October 1st, and got, Mrs. Vitale was there. And Steve was not able to make it, but they always do a presentation by the principal. They had a very good turnout, and they've got a full board, including a couple of new parents on the board, which is really nice to see. And they had their first, the pickleball tournament, which really did not make a lot of money. But it was the first one, and they learned a lot, and they're moving forward. And they also have their first, they just had it, their first staff
Grab and go?
grab and go, which I think went very well from what I heard. They asked the same question that Sue got in terms of whether you're going to be able to.
I forgot to send the
assist.
email out, but I'll get it out to them.
Okay, so the staff appreciation is part of what they use that for, and they are happy to implement it. They want you to know that, and they always appreciate the help.
Okay.
All right, we already discussed the visioning session that was held tonight. We have another one coming up next Tuesday. And then we have a regular building committee meeting on the following Thursday, that Thursday,
next
next week,
Thursday,
yeah, next
right?
Thursday, so. A lot of building stuff coming up. You already mentioned the public forums.
Right.
Coming up, so the first one is on the 22nd. Just also to remind people that town meeting will
Yes.
be on Monday, the 20th And there's a couple of school items on it, correct?
Oh, goodness.
I just looked,
yes.
we have
It's gonna be a busy week.
switchgear, special ed tuitions,
I mean, I know it's
McCarthy
there,
roof.
it's like I just.
Yeah, a lot of it relates to the town's free cash at the end of the year. The town manager had just recommended like where it goes, but I want to say almost close to 2.5 million was being recommended for the next phase of the McCarthy roof, which would be significant for us because obviously we can get it funded through that. It can come off the capital list because one way or the other, it's going to have to get done. Then we had the special education circuit breaker funding we talked about previously. So that's on there. I'm sorry, what was the third
switchgear.
one? Oh, the switchgear, they replaced the switchgear. Again, the schools are just aging as far as that goes. But they replaced the switchgear at McCarthy this past summer. Does it mention which school?
No, I just had the
All right,
warrant
so there
article.
was another school, I don't, it may be South Row, because when they're doing the roof over at South Row, I think there was a concern about the new power that's gonna be required to tie in the solar panels. So they might have to replace the switchgear for South Row. I'll find out for sure for you. But every year, I think they're gonna try to upgrade some of the switchgear. It's basically the electrical connection that comes into the building before everything gets out into the classrooms.
Okay, so just, this is
Yeah, there-
20th,
there
for
are
those of us that
few
are
good
town
items
meeting
for
reps. And if not, we could still come and
Right.
we have voice for the schools if you want.
Yep.
Okay. All right, any other new items? Awesome, okay. All right, I have no emails for public comment, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.